all the wonderful work they're doing and allowing the shiurim to be posted worldwide and to let Jews be in touch with Torah wherever they are around the world. And that's the amazing thing of Torah Anytime. People are watching all over the world. Tonight, I'm going to give you a lecture about a topic which is, I call it the Majesty of Man, lessons in personal growth. And really, what the Torah is all about in many ways is bringing us to a point where we become the real I, the real us. You know, I'll tell you a fascinating Zohar. The Zohar says that when you're in the womb, your mother's stomach, you're actually learning Torah with an angel. And that angel teaches you the entire Torah. And then just as you're about to enter this world, the angel actually taps you right over here. Boom. And you forget the Torah you've learned. And in fact, that's why when you hear something in this world, like a good spiritual thought, or you hear something, you go, wow, that was really great. You know what's happening? You're really being reminded of something that you had already learned. Isn't that fascinating? It's just reminding you of something that you already heard. You already learned that. And that's why it's so tasty. It's so good. It's so sweet. You hear it, oh, that was really, what a great idea. Great thought. It was the Torah you learned in the womb. Now, apparently, and this is where it gets a little bit scary. Well, it doesn't get so scary. I remember when my first daughter was born. So I remember I came right into the room just as she came into this world. And the first thing that I noticed about her was this big little dent in her upper lip, right over here. You seen the baby? And my first thought I remember was, oh, the angel had just tapped her right there. Just hit by the angel, struck by the angel. Just a moment before. That's what it is. Now I'll tell you something a little scary. When you leave this world, guess what happens? As the neshama, as the soul goes up to Shemayim, goes up to heaven, an angel meets you. And there's an angel that shows you a picture of your life. What does it mean, a picture of your life? It shows you a picture of who you were supposed to have been. Isn't that interesting? Guys, it's going to show a rabbi, the big beard, bigger than mine, holy rabbi, gleaming, glowing, a shelf of books which you authored yourselves. Show you, see those students? Those are your students. That's what you were supposed to have been. You had that potential. And girls, you're going to see this wonderful, wonderful tzaddiket, this holy woman. You know, big family, people all around you, children. A woman glowing from all the mitzvot that she had done. A holy woman like your grandmother looked like. That holy, holy woman, right? And you're going to look at a picture, or whatever it's going to be, an image of who you were supposed to have been. Now let me tell you something. This was a little scary. You know who that angel is, by the way? That angel, you're going to know that angel. You know why? Yeah, you met him before. It's the same angel. He was the one who taught you all that Torah for free. In your womb, the mother's womb, your mother's womb. And now he's looking at you to say, okay, so what did you do with it? I gave you a gift for free. Now, what did you make of yourself? Did you apply yourself to it and make you that person that you could have been? That great, great, righteous tzaddik, that Torah scholar? That's a scary thought in some ways. I think it's a scary thought. Because, you know, to see an image of who we could have been, you know what that must be like if we're not that person? The feeling of regret, the feeling of, ooh, I could have been that? Wow. I missed the boat. Interesting idea. But the reality is, the job in this world, during the time that we have now, is we have to utilize our time here in order to become that person. To become it. Now, how do we do it? How do we become that person that we're supposed to become? So, in my years in yeshiva, the main word that we heard daily was a word called Gadlut Adam, or in Ashkenaz we say Gadlus Adam. Gadlut Adam means the greatness of the human being. I don't think a day went by where we didn't hear that concept being spoken about. How great you can be. The Gadlut Adam, how great you can strive to be, what you're supposed to look like, what a Jew can be, what the human soul is capable of being. The Gadlus Adam, the greatness of the human being. I don't think I rarely heard thoughts about, humility and lowliness. The emphasis that I had in my yeshiva years, my Rosh Yeshiva, the emphasis was how great you can be. From the Gadlut Adam. And that was the message that was instilled in us day in and day out. That you have the capacity to be so great if you go for it. That's what you got to hear. That's what we all have to hear. Because we live in a world today, my friends, where that message has been totally forgotten. The idea that you're supposed to become something. We live in a world that says, you're successful if you acquire things, if you amass things, if you have a big bank account, you have a shiny metal car with leather seats that you drive. But to make yourself into something, that's a message that, unfortunately, we've lost a little bit. I remember hearing the name of Rabbi Volba, great tzaddik in Yerushalayim, great rabbi. I remember saying this before what were we in now? We're the 2008. I remember hearing in the 20th century, in the 21st century. In the 20th century, he used to say, what were the three great philosophies of the 19th century which shaped 20th century man? Does anybody know the three great philosophies? What were the three great philosophies of the 1800s that shaped the way we perceived ourselves in the 1900s? Who knows? Give me one.
Aristotle.
What's that? Aristotle's already from ancient. What philosophers in the 1800s were very important in shaping the 19th century man's vision of himself? Who knows? What?
Descartes.
What did you say, Fred?
Descartes.
Descartes already earlier.
Kant.
Descartes was 1700s, I believe. What's that? Freud. Number one, Freud. Good. Give me two more. Freud. Erickson. Oh, not forget. Away from psychologists. Kant was in the 1700s. Early 1700s, early 1800s. Well, Freud was number one.
Freud's a student.
I'll tell you another philosopher was a fellow named Karl Marx. Karl Marx. He had a very big influence in a place called Russia. Right? Communism. Right? That this idea of getting rid of wealth, sharing wealth. Karl Marx. And number three was someone named Darwin. It was Darwin.
Charles.
So by the way, Marx was Jewish, Freud was Jewish, and Darwin was wrong. But these were the three philosophers that had tremendous impact on the way 20th century man viewed themselves. This is what Rav Volba Zatzal used to say. He used to say like this. Think about this. He said, what were the three philosophies? Let's see. Basically, Karl Marx said that the essence of a human being is his capital production. The essence of man is a machine, what he could put out economically. Freud said, basically what? That the essence of the human being are these subconscious black, dark forces that drive you. We call it the id, right? The subconscious. Oh, you're being driven by all these passions that you can't control there. There's a big Yetzer Hara. That's what he basically said. He was mechaven. He came up with the idea of the Yetzer Hara, something we've known about for many thousands of years. Right? We know it very well. But he said there's a Yetzer Hara, there's a force inside you that controls you. That was Freud. And of course Darwin said what? That natural selection, and which was the natural outcome of that thought, was that man descended from the ape. So we came into the 20th century seeing ourselves as what? A machine, a Yetzer Hara, and a monkey. Now, if you were wondering why the 20th century was such a mess, 2 world wars, right? A Holocaust, it doesn't take much to understand. If that's the way the human being perceives himself, I'm a machine, I'm a id, and I'm an ape. What's the greatness of man? Where is the greatness? What all these philosophies forgot is that the essence of the human being is that what are we really? What we really are is we're a neshama, is we're a soul. And I think you all know this. If I were to ask you this question, are we bodies with souls or souls with bodies? What would you tell me? Souls with bodies. What's eternal about us is a soul. Everybody get that? Are we bodies with souls or souls with bodies? Right? We're souls that happen to be housed in these bodies. right? It's housed in these faces. It's good-looking faces. I mean, right? But the real essence of who we are is we're souls. 20th century man forgot that. But the essence of who we are is really a soul. What do we think we are? We're a monkey, right? We're a machine, and we're an id. One time they say Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky was a very great tzaddik, very great rabbi. He was on a plane with I believe one of the ministers in the Israeli government. And they happened to be sitting next to each other, and they were both in their late 70s. And Rav Yaakov, a great rabbi, so his students were serving him the whole time on the plane. And what do you need? Can I get you something? Are you cold? Are you hot? Do you need a glass of water? What can I hold the whole ride? So this gentleman who served in the Israeli government, about the same age, late 70s, he turns to Rav Yaakov. He said, I have to ask you a question. I see that your grandchildren are so attentive to all your needs. Are they Bukharian? No, he didn't say that. He said, I see they're so attentive to all your needs. He said, my grandchildren don't want anything to do with me. They don't talk to me, they don't call me, like I don't exist in their life. So he said a very brilliant answer. He said, listen, the reason my grandchildren respect me so much is that I'm 2 generations older, and therefore I'm 2 generations closer to the giving the Torah at Har Sinai. So therefore the wisdom that I have is worthy of respect. But you're 2 generations closer to the monkey, so why should they respect you? The past generation deserves no respect. It's closer to the ape. We say no, the past generation is closer to the giving of Torah at Har Sinai. They have more knowledge, more wisdom, more godliness. But it all depends, my friends. Success in this world depends on one thing. And listen very carefully what I'm going to tell you. It depends to what extent you can realize who you really are. And who you really are is not your body. Who you really are is your soul, is your neshama. And this neshama is so holy that the angels actually mistook Adam Harishon, the first man, to be God. That's how holy the soul is. The soul is actually a part of God, which God places inside of us. There are different levels of the soul. There's nefesh, ruach, neshama, different levels of it. Chaya and yechidah, the Jewish nation has actually one more level called yechidah soul, the highest level that actually can't even fuse with the body. It's so holy, it just hovers above the head. Sometimes you can detect that in people, in very holy people, the type of shine that goes around them. You've ever seen that? That the degree to which we can realize that we have a soul and how holy that soul is will really be the degree to which we'll strive to become that person that we're supposed to be. I was a big admirer of Christopher Reeve. Christopher Reeve who played Superman in the movies? So, we know the story, right? Unfortunately, he was a horseback accident and he injured his spinal cord. And the spinal injury left him to be a quadriplegic, in that the only thing he could move were his eyelids and his cheek muscles. And even with that, he actually lived a productive life. Did you know that he actually produced, he directed films, he wrote a book. And, he went to speak in Israel, close to the end of his life. And he went and he spoke in front of a foundation which was doing research on spinal injury. And he made an amazing statement that stayed with me. He basically made a statement that said that, my whole life, I thought that who I was my body. He said, because of my accident, my body has been taken away from me. But I've discovered that the real me isn't my body at all. The real me is my soul. He says, I've discovered me. Very, very powerful statement. But Hashem had to remove the body, had to injure him to such an extent that but what happened? He discovered who he is. There's something inside himself which is eternal and precious and will go on forever. Too bad he couldn't discover that while he was healthy, while he was well. It took being a quadriplegic to realize it. But our job, everybody, our job is to discover that soul and to develop it, to nurture it, understand what makes it tick. And we're going to talk a little about that tonight. First of all, how do we know we have a soul? How do we know it's there? Do we all know we have a soul? How do you know? I can't see it. I can't touch it. I can't feel it physically. I know it's there, but do we have proof? Can we prove that we have souls? So I'll tell you just, first of all, 2 classic proofs and 2 scientific proofs. Classic proof is the fact that, number one, if we believe in God, right, which we all do, we can't say that this world is everything. This world's such a short period of time. And there's so much difficulty in this world. Suffering in this world. Tests. Right? All sorts of things happen. Wars, famines, plagues. And then what happens? We die. So God, what do you create the world for? It must be logically that something is going to live on forever. And of course, what is that? That's the soul. This world is just a place where the soul has the opportunity to refine itself, to pass tests. So the soul itself is worthy of the reward that God wants to give it. Do you hear how that works? God wants to give us tremendous reward, but we have to earn that reward. We have to earn it. If we don't earn it, the reward God gives us is so meaningless. I heard such a beautiful example someone said the other day. He said, imagine you go in baseball today, right? Who's the biggest hitter in baseball these days? Who? I don't even know. Gary Bonds, is he still playing? Is he? Okay. What?
Gary Bonds.
Gary Bonds?
Not Gary.
Barry Bonds. Barry Bonds. Okay, Barry Bonds. So you imagine this big guy with big arm muscles, a little bit like myself, and he gets up there at the plate, and he gets ready for the swing. And imagine, all of a sudden the pitcher comes running up, says, walks up to him, moves 10 feet in, tells the infield, coming in, tells the outfield, everybody coming in, He takes the ball underhand, he goes, okay, ready, Barry? Barry, here it goes. And Barry takes it, and he hits it, and it goes out of the park. And everyone's going, whoa, that's so great, How much satisfaction does Barry Bonds feel?
Not that much.
What was the accomplishment? No accomplishment. God wants to give us the ultimate pleasure forever. But we have to earn it. If it gives it to us, what have I accomplished? What have I earned? What have I made mine? So this world is a world where the soul is tested and challenged. So number one, we understand logically, intellectually, that we believe there's purpose in this world, which we all do. We believe there's a creator, which we do. So it has to be that there's going to be a place where the soul is going to be eternal. Second proof, this has to do with also Jewish thought, is that, I'll tell you something. This is a world where the soul, or we ourselves, never seem to be able to be at rest. Have you ever noticed that? Not when you're sleepy or tired. But it's a world where we always seem to want to achieve something more. Our rabbis say, Yishlo mana rotza masayim. If you have 100, automatically you want 200. You can never sit back and say, oh, I have enough. As soon as you earn 100, you want 200. As soon as you get one type of car, you want the next type of car. As soon as you build one type of house, all of a sudden, I want to do an expansion. I want to make something bigger. So our sages say, you know where that drive comes from? The drive really comes from a need of something inside ourselves that wants to last forever. Something that's not satisfied in this world. How come we can never really be satisfied? Isn't it true? Have you ever tried that? As soon as you earn some money, you get a $100 paycheck. You know what the first reaction is, if you're honest with yourself, is? I should have made 200. If I have 200, I want 400. 400, I want 800. 860. You have $1 billion, you want $2 billion. It comes from the need of the soul to really go beyond and have more, and to get eternity. Sometimes people misplace that drive. They think the drive, they think they spent their whole life amassing things in this world, when really it's the soul's need to amass eternity. But that's really the soul speaking out. The soul is speaking and saying, look, I want something that's going to make me last forever. I want something that's going to give me a place forever. So we misplace it, and we think it has to do with amassing things in this world, but that's not the real need. The real need is eternity. That's why sometimes you go out, and you'll notice that people like to put names on buildings. Ever seen that? Trump Towers. Lefrak City. Why did this person, Lefrak, have to put his name on the building? So you know what the answer is? Deep down, a person thinks he's going to give him eternity. If my name can be on a building, I'll be around forever. That's really a need of the soul to be around forever. That's where it comes from. It comes from the soul's need. So there's something inside of us which wants more than this world. Now, I'll tell you something today. In today's world, we've actually done research. And they've done a lot of studies. And some of the studies have been with near-death experiences. They call them NDEs. That's the official word, near-death experiences, in which psychologists and psychiatrists have done studies, and there are a lot of books on this, a lot of information, where they've done studies of many, many people from many different cultures who've had what they call a near-death experience. A near-death experience is when a person is basically, I guess, clinically dead. The heart stops beating, there's no breath. The person is sort of pronounced dead, and then the person comes back and is alive again. And they've asked these people from cultures all over the world, what did you experience? What happened? And interesting, they've all described the same things. Exactly the same things. They've all said the first thing they had was they saw themselves rise above their body, and they saw their body below. And that happens because what happens when the neshama separates from the body, what happens is the neshama notices and sees the body below. And that's why you have to be very careful with a deceased body, with a dead body. Why? Because the neshama is above it and sees it, and in some way still feels the pain of anything that happens to the body. You have to be very careful in the pain, the disgrace, if it's disgrace in any way. The first thing they noticed was their bodies below them. Then they all described a certain type of tunnel that they went under. The Zohar says that's a tunnel that actually takes you underneath the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. They all then described a certain type of light. A light in which was so pleasurable that they were drawn towards it. And as they were drawn towards the light, they noticed that they saw relatives or people that they knew, grandparents, coming to greet them. Then when they came back into their bodies, you know what the sensation they all had? That they wished they could have stayed over there. That there was such a pleasure in where they were, they didn't want to come back. And you know what I think? What's that? I'm not sure. Just a few moments. A few moments. They're dead for only a couple minutes in this world. But then when you leave this world, time doesn't exist. So, but you know what I thought was very fascinating in this study? People who had tried to commit suicide and failed. That means a person was so distressed with life, so broken that the attempted suicide, tried to slit their wrists or took pills, whatever it is, and it failed. And they had a near-death experience. Such people never tried suicide again. And you know why? Because they realize there's something beyond. They realize, I don't have to worry so much in this world. Even if things are difficult, if my life is as good as I'd want it to be, there's a better place. This is just a temporary world. This isn't the end of it all. So things I could deal with problems. But people who attempted suicide and did not have one of these near-death experiences, they did attempt suicide again. They attempted again. They couldn't deal with this world. For whatever reason why they attempted suicide the first time, they attempted a second, third, whatever it was. So we have studies. We have scientific studies that talk about people, thousands of people, who've had these near-death experiences, all describing a journey that they experience. Of course, that's the journey of the soul. There's obviously something ticking inside of us. The second scientific study that they've done today, which is very fascinating, is they've done, and there's a couple of good books on this, thousands of case studies of people around the world who claim to have been different people in the previous lives. Now, what does that mean to claim to be a previous person? A person comes and said, I am, who am I? I'm Joe Smith. I lived in Nebraska. So what they would do, they would go out to where he said his house was, and they would ask him questions. Many times this was with children, because children aren't capable of, they don't have any bias. They couldn't have read up on it. They have no reason to lie. They said, okay, here's a wedding album. Name the people. Okay, that's Uncle Joe, and that's Uncle Bill, and that's Aunt Sally, and that's Aunt Nancy, right? Who are these people over there? Oh, that's Fred, and that's Jim, and 2,000-piece questionnaire. They answer it completely. They did this in thousands of studies of people who had what they claimed previous life experience. This is a psychiatric literature today. This isn't. In other words, Hashem is allowing things to be opened up for us today. Today we live in a world we're so close to Mashiach. Hashem is opening things up, giving us little sparks of emunah, of trust. So we see so much out there. Of course we have a soul. And of course the greatest proof for a soul is none of that. The greatest proof of the soul is there's something inside of me that just wants something more. There's something inside of me that wants a connection with something that I can't see. There's something inside of me that wants a connection with the Almighty. And perhaps the greatest proof is that there's something inside of me that's willing to give up personal comfort for somebody else. You know, something you'll never see in the animal world is you'll never see a big fat lion hunched over a dead deer and a scrawny lion next to him, and the big fat lion turns to the scrawny lion and says, hey, look, you need it more than I do. Why don't you take it? That's something you'll never see in the animal kingdom. But you will see in the human kingdom is you'll see a person, it might even be you. You're very hungry, you haven't eaten all day, you're starving, but there's somebody next to you who is a little bit hungrier. And you turn and you give your sandwich to that person, or your piece of pizza to that person, because that person needs it more. And you know what? As you give it, you know what the sensation is that you feel? You feel fulfilled. Joy. Happiness. You know what that's a proof for? It's a proof there's a soul. There's something inside of us that gets pleasure even when we deny ourselves the physical things that we need. I remember one time, a long time ago, I was on a hike in Israel, and it was a hike which we went through one of the parts of the Judean desert. And it was actually a hike which they had written on the bottom of the brochure, said L'meitivi lechet. Meitivi lechet in Hebrew means for very good hikers. And you're supposed to bring your own water. Apparently nobody read that. I didn't read it, and no one else seemed to have read that, because everybody came with one little canteen of water. And we ended up in the desert, in the hottest part of the day, and everyone's water ran out. And basically the guides who were with us said, like, well, doesn't everybody bring that big, jerry can of water like you're supposed to? And everybody said, we didn't know that. So we were stuck about 3 hours in the desert where we had hiked, with another 3 hours to get out of the desert, without water. I'll tell you, it was a thirst that I'd never experienced in my life before. They say thirst is one of the most terrible, plagues, lack of water. I remember experiencing it then. We had one thing of water we had to share. And actually what happened was they had to send the army. One of the people there was a runner, and the two people, they actually ran out, and the army had to come run in. It was kind of embarrassing, to bring us water. And that's how we got out. But I remember as we were waiting for them to come with water, we had like one, we called jerry can, like one canteen, like this big of water for about 30 people. So the rule was, as you passed it around, you could take one sip and then pass. It had to go for everybody. So I remember there were some people, as it got to their lips, they were so thirsty that they couldn't stop drinking. It just going down and down. And that's what happened. And they had to pry it away. And, and I was nervous. I was thinking, what's going to happen when it's my turn? Am I going to be able to control myself? And I really wanted to be able to control myself, but I was thinking, am I just going to, the temptation, when you're really thirsty like that, you just want to drink, your body craves it. So it came to me, and I took it, took one sip, passed, like that. And I remember thinking later that night, after my headache went away and everything, but I remember thinking later that night how I felt as I passed the water. And I remember analyzing it and thinking, how I felt? I felt really good. And I said to myself, why did I feel really good? I was in pain. I was dehydrating. And yet I'm feeling really good about passing the water. It makes absolutely no sense. What is causing me to feel good? My body is craving water. I'm dying of thirst over here. No, it's not physically, but I'm extremely thirsty. And something inside of me is experiencing tremendous happiness and joy. I realized, you know what that is? The pleasure I received was a pleasure of the soul. It was a pleasure my soul experiences. Why? Because I was able to help somebody else at the expense of denying myself. So we see in our own lives the fact that we're willing to give up of what we have for others, again, is a proof that there's something inside of us which is not just physical, which is eternal. Okay, so that's point number one. Point number one is we have to get in touch with the reality of the soul. Now, point number two, and this is really what I want to get to tonight. My friends, the reason why it is so difficult to accept criticism. Does anybody like to be criticized? We like to be criticized as much as we like our arms to be cut off, right? Or we like to be criticized, as we hate criticism. Do we hate criticism? I mean, criticism, don't criticize me, Don't say that. How can you say such a thing? Right? I'm going to explain to you why we hate criticism so much. Let me explain to you why. Listen to why. We do it from a verse. Go back with me in your minds to a parsha a few weeks ago, in which we read about Miriam, Aaron, and Moshe. And it says that Miriam and Aaron spoke Lashon Hara about their brother Moshe. What does Lashon Hara mean? They spoke something negative about Moshe. What did he say? Apparently Moshe had been married to a woman named Sipporah, and he had separated from Sipporah. He had stopped living with her husband and wife. The reason why he did it, of course, was because he was a prophet, and the level of prophecy he was on meant that he had to communicate with God at any moment. So that required that he be at a certain level of purity. So he separated from his wife Sipporah. Now, Miriam speaks to Aaron and says, what's Moshe doing? Why is he separating from Sipporah? Why isn't he living normally? He's a prophet, but we're also prophets. Avram was a prophet. Yitzchak was a prophet. Yaakov was, no one separated from the wives. They all lived normally. They're big families. What's Moshe doing? Separating from his wife? God comes down and speaks to Miriam. And says to Miriam, you just spoke Lashon Hara. You spoke negatively about your brother. You didn't judge him fairly. The reason why, of course, Moshe is doing this is because I told him to do it. He's a special prophet. He speaks to me face to face, anytime. He has to be on a high level. He's very different. So God comes down, and God rebukes Miriam. What happens to Miriam? Miriam gets a certain type of leprosy, right? Saras. She's separated from the camp for 7 days. Everybody waits for her. But it's the first, we see how serious the sin of Lashon Hara is from that. That Miriam, who loved her brother so much, who raised her brother, who only wanted the best for her brother, but said something negative, and that's called Lashon Hara. Judge people carefully. Lashon Hara means judging people carefully. Don't jump and speak so quickly. If they had thought a little bit more, they would have realized maybe God told them to do this. Lashon Hara usually means you don't think. How important it is to think carefully about what we say. Don't jump to say things. But now listen to what happens. God Almighty comes down to criticize Miriam. And he begins his words by saying the following. Listen to his words. So Hashem says to Miriam, he says to Miriam and Aaron, the psukim say, it says, V'yevod Hashem b'amon onon, Hashem came down in his cloud of glory, V'yamod pesach ha'oel, and it stood at the opening of the tent of meeting, V'yikra Aaron and Miriam v'yetzu shneim, and he called to Aaron and Miriam, and they both went towards Hashem. Listen to what Hashem says. V'yomer, Hashem says, Shimu na divarai. Please listen to my words. Please listen to my words. Shimu na divarai. Please listen to my words. He says, Moshe is a very different type of prophet. Other prophets, I appear in types of visions or dreams, but Moshe, I speak to face. So that's why he had to separate from his wife Sipporah. Moshe is so different. He's a special type of prophet. Now, our sages pick up on one little word that Hashem uses when he criticizes Miriam and Aaron. Can anybody tell me what that one word is that Hashem used? I said this Friday. What's the one word that he used? Let me say it again. Listen carefully, everybody. Especially Emmett Fellowship scholars. Vayomer, Shimu na divarai. Please listen to my words. Why say please? Hashem opens up by saying, please listen to my words. He's now going to rebuke, to criticize Miriam and Aaron. But he opens up by saying, Miriam and Aaron, Shimu na, please listen to what I'm going to say to you. Question is, why does Hashem use the word please? What do you say? Why does he use the word please? Anybody have suggestions? Why does he say please? What?
Even you want rebuking someone, you want to do it out of love.
Oh, so it's a softer way of speaking. Please. You expect Hashem maybe to say please? Which of the matters, but you're rebuking somebody. When you rebuke, a rebuke in general is a little bit harsh, but you're right, you do always want to rebuke out of love. But listen to what our sages say. And it's something so beautiful. Our sages say as follows. It says, Shimuna devarai. Please listen to my words, Hashem says. Ein na elaloshin bakasha. The word na in Hebrew means bakasha, please. Bakasha, please, bevakasha. Listen. This is a chum say, koloma, that's to say, afal pisha charabam af Hashem v'yelech. Even though Hashem ended the discussion by showing his anger. He was displeased with the words that he said about Moshe. B'kol makom, ein na elaloshin bakasha. The language of no is a language of please listen. Hashem spoke to them gently, sweetly. That if Hashem had spoken angrily, guess what? His words would not have been heard. We learn from that, of course, that if you want to criticize anybody, you have to speak very softly and very gently. Listen carefully to the implication of this. Hashem is teaching us how to get criticism. And the reason why we hate criticism so much. It's very important. Imagine Hashem comes down. Hashem himself. What does it mean when Hashem speaks to you? What does it mean? Can you imagine what that means when Hashem speaks to you? When Hashem speaks to you, it doesn't mean that you see Hashem. That's not what it means at all. When Hashem speaks to you, it means your entire existence now fuses with Hashem. All existence for you stops, and you and Hashem now are one. Reality is open up before you, and you see, and you and Hashem now are merged together. I can't describe it in other terms. That's what happens. It's an amazing experience. So imagine Hashem, the Almighty, comes. Hashem comes and he speaks to you. And he comes to criticize you. Do you think that if Hashem criticized you, you would accept his rebuke? You would accept his criticism? Do you think you would accept it? I think I would accept it. Well, if Hashem criticizes me, that he's the source of all reality. He's telling me there's something wrong. How could I not accept it? I'd accept it. I would makabel it. I would admit it to be true. I would try to change myself. Our sages say no. Hashem had to open up his words with shim'una. Please listen to me. And a rabbi say that if he hadn't said please, Miriam would not have listened. If Hashem hadn't spoken softly, they would not have heard him. They wouldn't have listened. They would have rebelled against his words. The Almighty himself, God. God is giving the criticism. But if God wouldn't have spoken softly, gently, please listen to what I have to say, they would not have been willing to listen. They wouldn't have accepted what God is saying to be true. So God has to speak gently. Please listen to what I have to say. I love you so much. You're such a wonderful, wonderful child. Such a good kid, Jacob. Okay, you did one little thing wrong. But you're such a good guy, such a good kid. It's just one little thing, that's all. You have to speak softly and gently. That's what God does. Because God knows that if you don't speak softly and gently, a person will not accept the criticism. Now, why is that? Why? It's one thing if I criticize, but if God criticizes, I shouldn't accept his criticism? You shouldn't accept his criticism? So I'm going to teach you such an important idea right now. The reason why is this. Listen carefully. It's because our neshamot, our souls, are so holy. Our souls are so pure. Our souls are so refined, so great, that the soul can't stand, it can't tolerate to feel that it did anything wrong. The soul, which is housed in this body, feels such pain when we do something that's wrong that the soul doesn't allow us to even accept that we did something that's wrong. It doesn't want to face it. It hurts too much. It causes too much pain. That's why we rationalize things away. We rationalize, I didn't do it, but it wasn't me. I'm a good guy. That's what they say, the prison cells of San Quentin are filled with people who never did anything wrong. They can't admit it. You know why they can't admit it? Because it hurts too much. It's too painful for the soul. And so God knows that. So when he speaks to Miriam and Aaron, he can't just tell them, hey, listen, guys, you really blew it. You really spoke Lashon Hara about your brother. I can do such a thing. You can't say that. He says to them, please listen to me, Miriam, Aaron, please listen to me. You're such great people. Such a high level. Oh, you're so wonderful in all respects. You do everything so well, so good. You're such good people. I love you so much. I'm so proud of you. One little thing needs to change. Got to fix one little thing up. Oh, then a person can accept it. Why? Because then a person's soul can say, I'm still something very holy. My holiness hasn't been taken away. I can still feel the greatness in me. I'm not ashamed of myself. Then a person can accept. But the reason why it's so difficult to accept criticism is because the soul doesn't allow it. Because of the holiness that's within us. Do you hear how that works? So of course we learn a very important lesson from this. If you want to criticize somebody, you want to correct somebody, you know how you have to speak? Very gently, very softly. You want to criticize a child? Don't come and just confront the child. You got to talk very softly. Such a wonderful, wonderful child. But one little thing did wrong. Ladies, you want to criticize your husbands? Right, Mirsen, right? When you get married, or you got to talk like this. You got to say, listen, Igor. Not talking about you, right? Just in general, Boris. You are such a great guy, and I believe in you so much, and you have such wonderful, wonderful qualities. And I married you because, I see that you are somebody so holy and special, but just one little thing, it would mean a lot to me if you would take the garbage out. That's how you have to talk. That's how you have to talk. Am I right? Am I right? Who's married? Am I right? Right, I'm right, right? You know what I'm saying? Why? Because the person will rebel at criticism because my soul can't tolerate it. I can't view myself as anything but holy and great because I am holy and great and you are holy and great. And guys, when you speak to your wives, you get married, turn to your wife, Bella. Right? Or Natasha. Mazal. Not talking about you. You have to say, listen, you are such a wonderful person, such a wonderful wife. I've never met anybody like you. Such wonderful mitos, such wonderful qualities. But, next time you drive the car, it's very important to turn off the lights before you leave the house, before you come in the house. Otherwise the battery dies out. But everything else you do is so perfect. Ooh, that osvo was delicious, It was your one. Okay, just remember, you got to turn the lights off before you come in, I came out in the morning, the car didn't start, I had to call AAA, it was a pain. But you got to criticize gently and build the other person up. That's the language of psychology. They call it, you have to criticize it the sandwich method. The sandwich method. That means one layer of a nice compliment, little teeny criticism slipped in there, and then a big loaf of compliment. Sandwich. That's what they say in psychology. But who cares about it? I never heard that. You got to read the books. You got to read the pop psychology. But who needs that? I'll tell you from the Torah. Shimuna, Hashem himself has to say, please listen to me. Because he knows that that's getting by Torah. The Sister Chaim say that if God didn't say please, they wouldn't have listened. And I'm explaining to you why. It's because the soul is so holy that it can't accept that it does anything wrong. So, isn't that interesting? Let me give you another proof of this. I'll give you such another beautiful proof of this. You're going to love it. We read a few parshas ago about a woman called a sota. Now, a sota, what's a sota? A sota is a woman who, listen just carefully, you should understand what it is. A sota is a woman who her husband suspects of perhaps having had an adulterous affair. He has no witnesses, he has no proof, but he's consumed with an overwhelming spirit of jealousy. And the reason why is because he has asked her and said, listen, please don't seclude yourself with this man, because I'm jealous. And she goes off and she secludes herself. She conceals herself. She goes into a room and he doesn't know what happened. And he's overwhelmed with jealousy. He can't do really anything about it because he has no witnesses. But he also can't tolerate living with her. So this is a woman who really has betrayed his trust. We're not talking about a nice lady. It's a woman who has betrayed his trust and done things flagrantly, blatantly, openly to make him jealous. And he can't live with her. So the Torah prescribes a treatment for it. What's the treatment? Listen carefully. In order that there should be shalom in the home, peace in the home. So they have to come together. There are certain requirements. They have to come where they're living. They have to go to Jerusalem. In Jerusalem, they have to go to the Kohen in the temple. This only took place. We had the temple. Water was taken from the kior, special water, in a special vessel. Then they took a parchment in which you'd write out God's holy name on the parchment. Then we'd take that parchment and scrape off God's name into the water, dissolve it into the water. The woman would then be asked to confess. Say to her, listen, lady, Natasha. Not Natasha, I should say. But I say to her, listen, if you had an affair with this man and you drink this water, you're going to die. You're going to die. How are you going to die? Your legs are going to fall off. Your stomach is going to blow up. And the guy that you had the affair with, he's going to die also. Supernatural death. They're both going to die. You're going to die. But if you confess and you admit that you had the affair, okay, you know what happens? Your husband will write you a letter of divorce, and you get divorced and go get remarried. But you won't die. Of course, you can't marry the person you had the affair with. That's not allowed. You're forbidden to him. But you can go and you can marry whoever you want. He'll divorce you, that's all. So admit it. If a lady had the affair, which is the better of the two options? Well, let's see. If she drinks the water and she's really guilty, and of course it also means that her husband could never have had an affair also. A lot of supernatural requirements to go into it. But if she's guilty, she's going to die. A very, very ugly, painful death. If she confesses, says, you're right, I sinned, I had an affair, okay. So you know what the din is? The halacha is, he writes her a get, a document of divorce. They get divorced, end the story. She goes her separate way, and he goes his separate way. Now apparently, however, if she is innocent and she drinks the water, you know what happens? She gets tremendous blessing. That apparently if she didn't have children, she has children. If she had difficulty in childbirth, it becomes very easy. She gets all sorts of blessing in her life, tremendous blessings of peace and shalom in the home. So blessing follows. That's what God says. God says it's worth it to erase my name for peace. Because the whole purpose of marriage is that you should discover God together. You need marriage to have a relationship with God that you can't have by yourselves. That's why you have to get married, everybody. That's why we're getting married. Did you know that? That's why we're getting married. We're not getting married to save on the rent. Right? We're not being married because she makes great oshplo. Right? We're not getting married because, he has a great job. We're getting married because together we can get closer to God than we can get by ourselves. By ourselves we're limited. Together we can go deeper, we can have a deeper connection with God that only you could do with the other half of who you are. So God says basically, listen, the whole purpose of marriage is that you have a deep relationship with me, but if you don't have shalom in the home, if you're fighting, if you don't trust each other, so the whole point of the marriage isn't going to achieve connection with me, so I'm not there. So you might as well erase my name, put it in the water, and drink it to reestablish the peace in the home. Because the whole purpose of marriage is to get close to me. I'm not there. I've already been erased, so you might as well just erase it in the water. You've already done it. So God says, erase my name for peace. That's how much God values peace, by the way. God values peace tremendously. So listen carefully. So here we go. You have this lady. This lady, her husband said, listen, I don't want you to conceal yourself with this man. I'm so jealous of you. Please don't do it. She said, I don't care. And she concealed herself with this man, and we don't know what happened. Did she have an affair? She didn't have an affair. This is rated R, everybody, PG+. So anybody under 18, please walk out right now. So no, you can stay because that was a joke. That was a joke. Good to go. Okay, but it's here we have this lady. The question: we don't know what happened. We don't know what happened. Did she have the affair? She didn't have the affair. She comes to the Kohen. The Kohen says to her, "Listen, if you drink this water and you are guilty, you're going to die a painful death. However, if you are guilty and you don't drink the water, but you confess, okay, that's it. You won't die. He'll give you a get. You get divorced. Go your separate way. If you're intelligent and you really had an affair, what would you do, people, ladies? What would that lady do? What should she do? Confess. If she's guilty and she drinks the water, she's going to die. Right? True. So simple logic would dictate that if she's guilty, she should say, yeah, okay, you're right. I am guilty. I know people die from this. I'm guilty, so I'm not going to drink this water. Now listen carefully. When the Kohen speaks to her, listen to the way he has to speak to her. Listen to the language. This is from the Mishnah in Sota, page Daf Zayin Amud Aleph. Hayumali no sal beistin. They would bring this woman to the basin in Jerusalem, based on the Godlish of Yerushalayim. Umimayim alag derech shemimayna eni nefashos. They would speak to her in the following way. V'omala, he would say to her as follows. The Kohen would say to her, Biti, my daughter, harbe yain osa. Oh, my daughter, listen. Here's the water. If you drink this water and you're guilty, you're going to die. Your stomach's going to blow up. If you confess now and admit you did it, okay, you're going to live and you'll get divorced, that's all. But you don't listen to what he says to her. The Kohen adds the following words in his speech. He says as follows, Biti, my daughter, harbe yain osa. It must have been the wine. It must have been the wine you drank. Wine makes a person lose a little bit of control. Wine makes a person a little bit too happy. It makes a person silly. It makes a person a little bit out of control. It must have been because of the wine that you drank. Then he says to her, harbe schochosa. It must have been because of the party. Look, you're having a party, and sometimes people get a little bit too friendly and a little bit too close, and they end up doing things they shouldn't have done. Harbe yaldus osa. Oh, it must have been some sort of childish behavior. It was like a child. It wasn't really you. People just sometimes do things that are childish and silly, and that's why you had an affair with this man. But it's not really the you. It's not the real you. Harbe shchenim haroim osin. Oh, it must have been the bad neighbors you have. You have bad neighbors in your life. Those terrible neighbors. It must have been those people that influenced you badly. That's why you did it. It's not really because you wanted to do it. Because you had bad neighbors. Harbe chaverim roim osin. It must have been the bad friends. You had bad influence in your life. So the Kohen, the Kohen says these words to her. Question, everybody. Why does the Kohen, when he's trying to encourage this woman to confess, speak this way to her? Why doesn't he simply say, listen, these are the facts. If you had the affair with that man, and you drink this water, you're going to die. But if you confess, you'll live. Why doesn't he simply say that? Why does he have to go through this whole speech of saying, "Oi, my daughter, you're such a wonderful, wonderful person. It must have been your bad friends who caused you to do this. I know you wouldn't want to do this, but people get involved with bad friends. Oh, it must have been the bad neighbors. It must have been the wine you were drinking that causes foolishness and laughter and but it's not really you. You're such a wonderful, wonderful person. You wouldn't do such a thing, but you were in a situation and you ended up doing it." Why does he talk to her like that? What's the answer? Why doesn't he simply say, "Confess or you'll die"? What's the answer? You know what the answer is? The answer is,
Give her time to think about it.
well, he's giving her time to think about it. Like he just came all the way down from Jerusalem. But you know what the answer is? If he didn't speak to her in this way, guess what? She would not confess. She would not confess. Even though her life is on the line, she would not confess. Why? Why? What's that? Say again? Why would she be? What causes the intimidation, though? What causes her to be intimidated? Fear of what? No, she's going to die. What's that?
Being sold.
Oh, you know what it is? Listen carefully. If the Kohen would simply say to her, listen, if you drink that water, you'll die. You know, it's an accusation. She's not going to confess. He has to speak to her in the soft, gentle language of, you are such a wonderful lady. You are so holy, you are so good, you are so pure. Oh, you're such a tzaddikus, you're such a wonderful girl. But look, it must have been the wine, it was the bad influence, it was the bad friends. You know what our rabbis are teaching us? If the Kohen would not speak in that language, she would not admit that she did anything wrong. You know what the reason why is? Because the soul is so holy that the soul cannot accept that it did anything wrong. And a person will do anything they can do to rationalize that they did not do it. In her own mind, she would truly believe, I did not do it. I didn't do it. But she did do it. In her own mind, she would think, I really didn't do it. I don't remember. It's not clear to me anymore. That's the holiness of the soul, everybody. The soul is so pure and so good that it cannot tolerate the feeling that it did anything wrong. So if you want to encourage her to confess, what do you have to do? You have to say to her, listen, you are such a holy person, such a good person, such a wonderful, wonderful person, but it was the wine, it wasn't you. It was the beer, it was the vodka. But it wasn't you, Jacob. It wasn't you because you are so holy. That's how you have to criticize. If you don't criticize like that, a person will not be able to tolerate the thought that they actually did something wrong, because that is the holiness of you. That's the holiness of the soul. Do you know how that works, everybody? And that's why, my friends, it's so difficult to admit that you do anything wrong. We cannot live with ourselves. Now, you know what that feeling is, by the way? You know the feeling of guilt? Does anybody ever feel guilt? Every day? You feel guilt? You know what guilt is?
No, not every day. I'm saying everyone does.
We all do. But what is guilt? You know what guilt is? Guilt is really the pain of the soul. It's the tears of the soul. It's the soul's feeling that something has been blemished about it. And if you wake up in the morning and you feel guilty about something, you're supposed to look and think, what did I do yesterday or last night? What did I say? Did I mistreat somebody? Did I do something that I'm not so proud of myself for? Because the soul's experiencing pain. Guilt is a check and balance to keep the soul online. It's the pain the soul's experiencing. But see how that works, how beautiful it is? It's so difficult to accept criticism. But the reason why is because the soul is so holy. And the soul, therefore, rebels at the thought that it's in a body that did something which rebelled against God. So you want somebody to admit they did something wrong, you want to instruct someone, you want to speak to a child. You have to say, listen, you're such a wonderful, wonderful child. You're such a great person, but you had a bad friend who influenced you. And then the child would say, you're right. Oh, I have to change. But we just look at the child and said, you are a lousy kid. Just like the child won't change, you won't change either. And you know what, my friends, you have to speak to yourself like that also. And when you do something wrong, occasionally I do something wrong, right? When we do something wrong, we have to talk to ourselves in that language also. I am a very, very holy person, and I'm a wonderful person. I made one mistake, but I'm going to try to fix it up. That's the power of the soul. It's a function of who we are on the inside. Now, let me give you one more example. It says in the book of Ruth that when Ruth and Naomi are coming back from Midian to the land of Israel. So we know that Ruth has decided to go through a real proper conversion and remain with Naomi. Ruth She wants to become a Jew. It says, as they're walking, Ruth cannot keep up with Naomi. She's like pain. She cannot keep up with her. Now, you know why? It's very interesting. The question is, why can't she keep up? Ruth was a young lady. Naomi was an old woman. Older than Ruth. One would expect that Ruth would, at least be able to walk as fast as someone older than Naomi. Yeah.
The older person has more experience.
But they're walking, just walking. Physically, physical strength. She can't keep up physically with Naomi. So our sages are bothered. The Vilna Gaon says something so fascinating. The Vilna Gaon says the reason why is because Ruth now is on her way to become a Jew. She's on her way into the land of Israel. She's on her way to a proper conversion. And when a person is rising in holiness, is trying to get closer to God, you know what happens? There is resistance. There's a force that tries to stop you. That's called the Satan, that's called the Yetzer Hara. The job of the Satan, the job of the Yetzer Hara, it's the same spiritual energy, is to allow us to have free choice and to create challenge. And therefore, when we try to achieve a new level, you know what happens? What happens is, we'll experience in our lives resistance. So here Ruth was coming into the ultimate spiritual elevation in the land of Israel to be a Jew. So what happens is, the Yetzer Hara steps inside herself, the Satan, and creates a heaviness. She can't do it. She feels tired. She physically feels weak. So we have to understand something. That when we want to elevate ourselves, when we want to start rising that ladder of spiritual greatness, and we feel inspired, and we want to change, and all of a sudden, I want to get to that next level. And we start moving ourselves up that ladder. So you know what happens at first? At first, there's all of a sudden a great dose of inspiration. You feel like, I'm going to do it. That's something which God gives us. It's like a spiritual energy, like of excitement. But you know what happens right after that? All of a sudden, it becomes very difficult. And that difficulty is because now, as we're achieving greater perfection, greater holiness, the Satan comes in and tries to stop us. All of a sudden, we don't want to do it. I don't want to get up to go to synagogue, this is too difficult. I don't want to go pray. I don't want to give the charity. It's like too hard to keep kashrut and Shabbat. It's so long. All of a sudden it becomes difficult. You know what, my friends? That difficulty is a proof that the soul is in the process of experiencing elevation. And the reason why you're feeling the difficulty is because now you're trying to ascend. So now it becomes difficult. So it's a very important principle. You know why? Because it means that if you're feeling difficulty in doing mitzvot, something's hard for you, you know how you should feel? You should feel so good about feeling it to be so difficult. You should say, oh my gosh, this is wonderful. It is so difficult for me. It must be that my soul is really on the ladder of growth. I'm moving forward. I'm moving higher. And that's why it's becoming difficult. So a person should really say, I feel so good about the fact that this is hard for me. Instead of feeling and saying, oh gosh, I'm such a terrible person. Like, last week I felt so good about getting up early and going to the synagogue and praying. And this week I can't do it. It's so hard for me. Instead you should say, I'm so proud of myself. I must really be on the path of spiritual growth. Otherwise it wouldn't be so difficult. The fact it's so difficult is a proof that I'm really on the path. Feel so good about it feeling so hard. Do you hear how that works? Don't feel bad about it feeling difficult. Feel good about it feeling difficult. You should feel very good about that. Because it means you're on the right path. You're on the right track. Very important lesson. There was once a group of converts to the Jewish people. And it wasn't clear whether or not they were really converts or not. Was the conversion a sincere conversion? Not a sincere conversion. So this went on for a couple hundred years. And at the end of a couple hundred years, the rabbis determined that they were not really Jews. You know why? I'll tell you why. Because on Pesach, they were super strict on their matzahs. They took on chumrot, strictures, that no one else in the Jewish people took on. They were super machmir. So you know what Rabbi said? They're not Jews. You would say, what do you mean? They're super strict. Of course they're Jews. No. The fact that they were so strict, in Passover, we're all very strict in Passover, right? They went beyond what all the rest of the Jewish people did. A rabbi said, guess what? They're not Jews. You know why? Because there's no resistance. There's nothing stopping them. That means they're not commanded to do the mitzvah. If you're commanded to do something, the Yetzer Hara will make it difficult. And if it's not difficult, it means what? Not a Jew. You don't have the command. I'll tell you sometimes, like when I lecture on the college campuses, I'll be lecturing, and I'll be looking around, and I'll know exactly who in the audience is Jewish and who's not Jewish. I can tell by looking who's Jewish and not Jewish. You know why? Because whoever is not Jewish is listening to every word I'm saying. And they're agreeing. They're like nodding. They're listening to every word. They're listening. They're agreeing with me. Oh, that's so beautiful. It's good. The Jews are listening to me like, yeah. And the reason is because a Jew knows this is obligating. A Jew knows I got to strive, I got to be someone, I got to be greater, I got to take on mitzvah. The non-Jew's not commanded. So what do? Of course it sounds great. It's beautiful. Who doesn't want to close to God? Everyone does. I was once giving a class, and a certain girl was like, she came up to me afterwards. She said to me, I want to tell you something. I'm not Jewish. So I said, I knew that. I didn't tell her, but, the mind I was thinking, what a surprise. How did I know? Because it was a small class, about 10, 12 people, and she was sitting there, and every word I'm saying, she's like, there was no resistance. It means there's no resistance, there's no command. Because there is resistance, it means the soul is struggling to move. So you got to be so proud about the resistance. If you can't get up in the morning to daven, you have to say to yourself, "Oh, Baruch Hashem, I'm on the right path in life. This is hard. I feel so good about it being hard." But you have to talk to yourself. I'm doing something good because it's hard. Because if it's easy, it means I'm not striving, I'm not struggling. I'm having pressure because it is difficult. And that's how you have to speak to yourself. You have to realize that the soul is on a journey, it's moving. Okay, so let's just sum up a little bit what we said. So we made a few points tonight about the greatness of the human being, the realization that the essence of the real I is the soul. The soul is not satisfied in this world. It wants to grow, it wants to become greater. We have scientific evidence for it by near-death experiences. We have scientific evidence of children of people who've claimed previous lives. We see that the reason why we reject criticism, and we can't tolerate criticism, is because of the holiness of that spark inside of us called the soul. And it can't tolerate the feeling that we have done anything wrong. And that's why we have to criticize so gently. Miriam, you have to say, please listen, Miriam. God himself has to say it. She would never have heard. You speak to this lady who's about to die. You have to say, listen, you're such a wonderful lady. That's why you did it. It was the wine. It was the song. It was the bad neighbors. Otherwise, she would never admit it. She did something wrong because the soul won't let her. We see that when we're on the path of spiritual growth, there will be resistance. And in that resistance, we should take such pride. Feel, I'm on the path of greatness. I'm moving in the right direction. Don't be afraid of the resistance. Don't be despairing of the resistance. Don't feel saddened because of the resistance. Know that the resistance means my soul is moving. And therefore the Satan is trying to stop it. That's all it is. Feel good about it. Finally, there is a very, very great, it's sometimes important, Mrs. Sharm says this, read books about really great people. A lot of good books about really great people. I'll tell you, there's once, when I was in Israel, going back literally about 25 years ago, so I was told that there was a very great tzaddik and tzedekis, husband and wife, in the northern part of Israel. And the people come from all over the world to meet them. So I remember I got in a van with a bunch of guys. Someone said they wanted to go. I said, okay, let's go. And we went there. And there was a line of people literally around the house. The house had no floor, dirt floor. A couple came out, big smile on their face. Both Holocaust survivors. People came from the entire world over to get their blessings and advice. So I remember it was my turn, and I went in, I spoke to this rabbi. I remember the first thing he did was he kissed me on my right shoulder. Right over here. I spoke to him, and he actually gave me some prophecy. He told me about something that's going to happen in the future. I asked him about somebody who needed help. He told me what it will be. And it turned out. I had no idea for 25 years who these people were. In the back of my mind, I remember this experience, but I know what to talk to about. Like, who are those people? Do you remember that? Like, where did we go? What happened? Like, until 2 years ago, I found a book.
Holy Woman.
Yeah. A book called The Holy Woman, written by Sarah Rigler, woman in Jerusalem. And I started reading this book. I said, oh my gosh. That couple, Sarah Kramer and her husband, described the house up in Kfar Gidon, in the northern part of Israel, the dirt floor. It described how he used to kiss everybody on the right shoulder. And for years I was wondering, why did he kiss people on the right shoulder? I couldn't figure that. I thought it was a Kabbalistic thing. I've read in the book, it's because he used to kiss everybody on the cheek. But his wife was concerned that he would get germs, get sick. So instead he would kiss people on the shoulder, and there weren't as many germs. So I started reading the book, and I was fascinated. And I read something about this woman. And this woman, Sarah Kramer, so she's being interviewed. She's talking to the writer, the author of this book who wrote it about her, Mrs. Rigler in Jerusalem. So Mrs. Rigler asks her a question. She says, listen, you know, this woman, Mrs. Rigler, was not yet a religious person, was speaking to her and saying, listen, you went through the Holocaust. Tell me about the Holocaust. Tell me about the concentration camp you were in. So she was in Auschwitz, and she was actually one of the children that Mengele Yimak Shemo operated on these sick experiments on twins and things like that. She was one of those children. Her whole inside had been taken out, basically. And she survived. And she said, tell me about Auschwitz. And she says, you know what? Auschwitz wasn't such a bad place. So this woman interviewing her, Mrs. Rigler, says to her, Auschwitz wasn't a bad place? What do you mean Auschwitz wasn't a bad place? Don't tell me it wasn't a bad place. So she said, listen, you know, we were girls from a certain part of Czechoslovakia. We all got on the train together. We were transported on the train together. We stuck together in the camp. If one girl needed food, we'd make sure she had food. We'd give up our bread rations for another one. If somebody needed help, we would secretly go to help that one. We prayed together. We gave each other support. We comforted each other. Somebody would memorize whole chapters of Chumash, Pirkei Avot, Tefillah, so that we should all be able to say it together and Tehillim. So it wasn't such a bad place. As long as you're in a place where you can give to somebody else, it's not a bad place, she said. Then she turned to the author, this woman who had spent a number of years, about a dozen years, studying in ashrams, these Buddhist-type temples. She said, where you've been for the last 12 years, those are bad places. And what she meant by that was because the ashram is selfish. It's all about me. It's about my spirituality, my connection with me. She said, if you're in a place where you can give, it's not such a bad place. But it's all about you. That's a bad place. So when she said that, the writer of this book says it totally transformed her way of thinking. That the purpose of this world isn't to take, it's to give. And if you're in a situation where you can give, then you're living life to its fullest. You know, my friends, we started the speech with this idea that the truest proof, the truest manifestation of the soul is really the desire to give. The fact we're willing to give to others of ourselves, even when we need it, and feel joy from it and satisfaction, is the greatest proof that the soul is there, and it's also the greatest way in which we improve and we develop the soul. And that's what life is about. The journey to develop the soul through the act of giving. Thank you for listening, everybody. I enjoyed speaking to you. And wonderful shows.